You know, I bought a bunch of tires. You know, several $1,000s worth of tires. Yeah, we got them for next year. That way, you didn't lose that money. You might say, I repositioned the figures. Now, at that time, we didn't have cameras on the school buses. Took some of that money, bought cameras. You know, use it wisely for the system, but you didn't want to give it back because you're not going to get it back. So I readjusted the figures. You know, and still their money, they still got the benefit out of it. But, you know, that happens sometimes. People will readjust. And unfortunately, sometimes those who are doing the readjusting may not be doing it honestly. That's all. You may not always be honest. So you don't never know. So in verse 8, and the Lord commended the unjust steward because he had done wisely. For the children of this world are in their generation wiser than the children of light. You know, he's commended because he has done wisely. He's made wise decisions. He's done wisely. But now what is not happening here, again, whether it was true or not, he is not being commended for being wasteful. He's being commended for being wise, making some wise decisions. He's not being commended for being dishonest. You know, if you could look at what we just read, compare it to verse 4, he says, in verse 4, I am resolved what to do, that when I am put out of their stewardship, they may receive me into their houses. Well, he's not being commended for being dishonest, but here it seems like he's being labeled as being somewhat dishonest with the figures. They were perhaps inflated, like you said. So, you know, you got a different parallel here. And so, you know, yeah.
I like that. I'm not saying that all rich people are a little dishonest on figures, but a lot of times, if he started out, it was a certain rich man. Mm-hmm. Okay, and we know it back down through history when the riches came through different tactics. Okay, and most even today's figures, most rich people are different tactics. The stock market, they get their money, they overcharge for certain items or whatever. Okay, so again, we're not saying that he was dishonest. Okay, but he used inflated mm-hmm. prices. Okay, but he pointed out that he was a rich man.
Right.
Okay.
Exactly right. And you're right. Certainly not all rich people are dishonest. Certainly not. Many are, but then again, so are many of us poor folks. You know, it goes both ways, doesn't it? But most of the time, if a rich person is accused of something, they get the headlines because they're rich or whatever. But he was being somewhat deceptive because you had the inflated numbers, and he's changed the numbers around, so maybe a little deception there. But he's not being commended for dishonesty or anything like that. But he is being commended for showing some good judgment here at the end. Looking out for his future. And think about that. Maybe not in the same context, but in the lives of many people. Are there things in the lives of many people, whomever they may be, that are not right in the sight of God, that we're going to give an account for, and we need to look beyond here and now and look toward eternity and make changes? certainly if sin's involved, we need to repent of that sin, correct the problem, turn away from it. So, he's being commended for his good judgment and looking ahead, looking toward the future. He'd been made this accusation, had been made, and we see the inflated numbers, if you will, and he was shrewd enough to come up with a plan, how to deal with the situation. So,
what he mentioned when he said, in order for the rich man to get into heaven, he would need to give away everything.
mm-hmm.
So isn't this put us in line with what this guy went back and did? He began to give away all of these items. So he's really trying to line himself up, isn't he?
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's good that he was thinking ahead, making preparation, making some plans. But the bad part was that he was in that situation. Whether it was legitimate or not, the accusation was made. It does appear, as we saw in verses 5 through 8 or whatever it was there, that there was some changing of the numbers. So apparently it looks like there maybe been something going on. But, and I like the term you used, perhaps the inflated numbers maybe. But he is looking ahead. He's planning ahead. And how you deal with it. And like Anthony was talking earlier, how do we deal with the various situations that we face in life? You can't avoid them. You get a letter, and here it is, almost April the 15th, time to send your check in if you hadn't already done so. Whenever you get a letter from the IRS, we're going to audit you. Do you ignore that? No. That'd be a bad mistake. You make preparation. How are you going to deal with it? How are you going to face it head on? And that could be true with any situation. Like, how do we deal with it? How do we handle it? And we all have face different challenges in life from person to person, different situations. How do we handle it? And certainly start out with prayer. Pray about the situation. Meet it head on. Avoiding it doesn't solve the problem. And so, deal with it and move on. Does worrying about a problem solve the problem? No. That's true. But there's a big difference in concern and worry. And you're right, it's hard not to be worried over something that might be a serious situation. And part of the lesson here, or the focus here is, let's notice verse 8. And the Lord commended the unjust steward because he had done wisely. For the children of the world are in their generation wiser than the children of light. What's the point of that statement right there, that last statement in the latter part of verse 8? Children of the world are wiser than the children of light.
We're talking about the world itself.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking he's thinking, because I had the same idea there. The children of life is, as you say, you get preparing for another life, not this one. Okay.
Exactly.
Worldly people are smarter in their businesses with each other than spiritual people are.
Exactly right. And Jesus is wanting his disciples to be focused on the kingdom, eternity, as the people of the world are focused on the world. Be as focused on eternal matters as the worldly people are on worldly matters. have that focus. And as Christians, we are to look out for eternity, the future. How many of us, I'm not necessarily asking show of hands here, but how many of us have made plans for the future here on earth, physical future? Maybe it's retirement, whatever, it could be any number of things. Most people have in some ways, whatever they may be. But are we as focused on eternity as we are on the here and now? What's more important, here and now or eternity? Eternity. And that's part of what's being taught here. Focus on the eternal nature, eternal things. Prepare for that eternal home, not just here and now, but prepare for eternity. And in this parable, he's being commended for looking ahead, making preparation. And we need to look out for eternity more than here and now. And we're all focused on here and now somewhat, and should be. But we certainly need to be focused on eternity as well. Then in verse 9, and I say unto you, make to yourselves friends of the mammon of unrighteousness, that when ye fall, they may receive into everlasting habitation. Couple possible things here. Verse 9, amen. Go ahead and be like the unjust steward. Make your worldly friends. And if this is what you're going to do, then you're going to spend eternity with them. So, in that context, in verse 9, when he says, make yourselves friends of the mammon of unrighteousness, that when you fall, they may receive into everlasting happiness. Is he saying, hey, be like the world? Is that the implication here? Go ahead and be like the world? It's a warning here. If you're going to be like the world, this is where you're going to end up. Don't be like the world. Go ahead and be like that if you want to, and this is going to be the outcome. But he certainly doesn't want that. He wants us to prepare for that eternal home. But if we fail to do so, consider what the outcome is going to be, what the results are going to be. So it is important that we have the right focus and the right sense of direction as we go through life. Life is a struggle. We all face them. We all have our challenges. And, we got to be focused on eternity. And then in verses 10 through 13. He that is faithful in that which is least is faithful also in much. He that is unjust in the least is unjust also in much. If therefore you have not been faithful in the righteous mammon, who will commit to your trust the true riches? And if you have not been faithful in that which is another man's, who shall give you that which is your own? No servant can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or else he will hold to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and mammon. Can't serve God and mammon. Who are we going to serve? Can't have it both ways. We're going to be of the world, we're going to be like the world, or we're going to be focused on, serving God. What's our answer going to be? The choice that we make. Well, a lot of things happen in this particular parable. One, the accusation of being wasteful in verse 2. The dishonest concept in verse 8. Was unprepared for the future, but came up with a plan looking ahead. And then, in verses 4 through 7, if you really look at the context, he was using other people for his own gain, for his own benefit. So there are some good points in this parable, and there are some negative points. And we need to make sure that we're always focused on what God would have us to do. As stewards, we're going to give an account of many, many different things, of what we've been given stewardship over, our attitude toward it, how we deal with it, how we treat others. You know, we're going to be held accountable. That pretty well sums up that particular the parable right there on the unjust steward. And so we'll pick up next time on the parable of the leaven next week.